So I gave you guys the title already, Buzzfeed News, and the subheadline reads, internal NYPD files show that hundreds of officers who committed the most serious offenses, the most serious offenses, from lying to grand juries to physically attacking innocent people, got to keep their jobs, their pensions, and their tremendous power over New Yorkers' lives. So here's how the article begins. Secret files obtained by Buzzfeed News reveal that from 2011 to 2015, at least 319 New York Police Department employees who committed offenses serious enough to merit firing were allowed to keep their jobs. Many of the officers lied, cheated, stole, or assaulted New York City residents. At least 50 employees lied on official reports, under oath, or during an internal affairs investigation. 38 were found guilty by a police tribunal of excessive force, getting into a fight, or firing their gun unnecessarily. 57 were guilty of driving under the influence. 71 were guilty of ticket fixing. One officer, Jared Dill, threatened to kill someone. So these aren't small offenses. Another, Robertson Tunis, sexually harassed and inappropriately touched a fellow officer. What about blue on blue crime? That's not in the article, that's me saying that. Some were guilty of lesser offenses, like mouthing off to a supervisor. So continuing, at least 24 of these employees worked in schools. Andrew Bailey was found guilty of touching a female student on the thigh and kissing her on the cheek while she was sitting in her car. What? In a school parking lot while he was supposed to be on duty, Lester Robinson kissed a woman, removed his shirt, and began to remove his pants. And Juan Garcia, while off duty, illegally sold prescription medication to an undercover officer. Who are these people that are being employed by the by the NYPD? Who are these people? I would like to know this. Hold on, let me make sure my stream is okay, so everything looks good. Yeah, so let me continue. In every instance, the police commissioner, who has final authority in disciplinary decisions, assigned these officers to, quote, dismissal probation. You're going to hear that term a lot in this article. Dismissal probation. That's their little get out of jail free card. And how the NYPD gets around holding their officers accountable. A penalty with few practical consequences. The officer continues to do their job at their usual salary, so they're not really punished. This is a slap on the wrist. They may get less overtime, whoop-de-doo, again, that's me saying that, and won't be promoted during that period. During that period, they won't get promoted, which usually lasts a year. When the year is over, so is the probation. So it means absolutely nothing. So yeah, they don't get overtime and they don't get promoted for a year. That means absolutely nothing. That means absolutely nothing. Today, many continue to patrol the streets, arrest people, put them in jail, and testify in criminal prosecutions. Let me repeat that. That needs to be repeated. Based on what I've already said in the article. If you are listening to this, like the video, retweet the video. If you're on Facebook, share the video on Facebook. Let this be known, because I read these articles because I know most people aren't going to read these articles. Most people don't even share these articles. You will see stuff on Facebook and Twitter, complete and total nonsense, I'm just calling it what it is, that has thousands of likes, thousands of retweets. People love sharing nonsense, unfortunately. That's just the way social media is. But when it comes to stories like this, and I said this on Twitter, this should be the top news story on all of the cable shows. CNN, MSNBC. We know Fox News is not going to cover this, but we know CNN and MSNBC won't cover it either. Okay, because the corporate media, unfortunately, going back to why I started the Facebook group and the name of the Facebook group, the corporate media, unfortunately, is in on the cover-up. That's clear as day. If there's nothing else you understand about state violence and police corruption and all of these, because I've read too many of these stories to know how this shit goes. Okay, they're in on the cover-up, so they'll be talking. I don't have the news on right now. I guarantee you, if I turned on CNN, if I turned on MSNBC right now, right this second, I would put money that they're talking about Russia. I would put money on it. Russia is the only thing they know how to talk about right now. But actual stories like this, mum's the word. You know it and I know it. Okay, this is why we need our black media. This is why we need black media. This is why support black media, not just me, but other black people as well. Anybody who is covering stories on YouTube, Twitter, anybody who is covering stories that you don't hear people talk about a lot. There's a reason you have major stories, major whistleblower stories, because that's what this is. This is a whistleblower who is exposed. I'm gonna get into that in a second. I'm ranting right now. I'm gonna get to that when I read the rest of the article to you guys. But a whistleblower revealed this story. A whistleblower came forward with this information and gave this information to Buzzfeed. Okay, and stories like this are very important, but they don't get talked about enough, even on the left, unfortunately. And I'm gonna get to left people on the left in general in a second. But let me get off my soapbox and let me continue. Okay. Today, many continue to patrol the streets. I'm repeating that sentence. Arrest people, put them in jail, and testify in criminal prosecutions. But the people they arrest have little way to find out about the officer's record. By design. This is why when you hear people say the system isn't broken, this is the way the system was built to work, this is what people mean when they say that stuff. Because in many ways it's both. The system is both broken and it was set up to do this. It's broken because on paper the system isn't supposed to work this way. Okay, but it's not broken and it was set up to do this like they say, because behind closed doors they have all of these machinations in place to cover up their crimes. Okay, so continuing, they are forced to make life-changing decisions, such as whether to fight their charges in court or take a guilty plea, without knowing, for example, if the officer who arrested them is a convicted liar, information that a jury might find directly relevant. And I agree. BuzzFeed News reporting is based on hundreds of pages of internal police files that, like all disciplinary records, the police department keeps secret, citing a controversial state law on, quote, personal records. So they keep this stuff secret, y'all. That's why you don't hear about it. And you also don't hear about it because when whistleblowers come forward, when the good cops come forward, nobody says anything. People always wonder, where are the good cops at? No, they're there. And I'm not one of these people that think all cops are bad. I want to put that out there to you. I don't think that. Okay, but I do understand the reality of the situation. Okay, you don't just have a bad cop problem. it's not just the bad, corrupt cops. Okay, it's the police commissioners, it's the police unions, it's the prosecutors, it's the media, it's the judges, it's a bunch of people. It's not just the cops, it's not just the corrupt cops. But let me continue. And here's getting to what I was saying a second ago. The files were provided by a source who requested anonymity. They were subsequently verified through more than 100 calls to NYPD employees, visits to officers' homes, interviews with prosecutors and defense lawyers, and a review of thousands of pages of court records. So BuzzFeed really went out of their way to prove this. Like, this wasn't just something BuzzFeed saw and just ran with the story and was like, yeah, let's just print this without actually verifying what the heck we've been given. Like, no, they went through, they dotted their I's and they crossed their T's. So I commend them for this. And before I continue, I want to give a shout out to the authors. Okay, Kendall Taggart, a BuzzFeed news reporter, and Mike Hayes, another BuzzFeed news reporter. I want to give props where props are due. So continuing, over the coming months, BuzzFeed News plans to publish a database with information about the NYPD officers and civilian employees who have received dismissal probation. The probation files do not include all officers who received dismissal probation during the years in question. According to the NYPD, of the more than 50,000 people who work for the department, at least 777 officers and an untold number of other employees received a penalty during the 5 years in question. During the same period, 463 officers were forced to leave or resigned while a disciplinary charge was pending. And let me reiterate something. Okay, going back to the first paragraph of this article. This only covers the years from 2011 to 2015. But this problem is so huge, we all know it's been going on for decades. So keep that in mind. This is only 2011 to 2015. But the probation files are by far the most thorough accounting of this practice to date. They pull back the curtain on one of the NYPD's most fiercely guarded secrets, providing the most extensive record available of which officers, despite committing serious misconduct, continue to wield tremendous power over New Yorkers' lives. New York is one of only 3 states, along with Delaware and California, that has a law specifically shielding police misconduct records from the public, according to a study conducted by WNYC in 2015. So New York, Delaware, and California actually have laws protecting records of police misconduct from being seen from or being shown to the public. That's incredible. Even though it's only 3, the problem could be much worse than that. But we even know from previous reporting that there are states around the country, even more states around the country, that block body cam footage from being released to the public. I think North Carolina, where I'm at, North Carolina has some sort of weird, funny law like that. So, they go out of their way to hide certain problematic truths. Okay, but that's why I'm here. That's why I have to have black and intellectual. I don't want to have black and intellectual, but unfortunately, I have to have black and intellectual. I have to have that Facebook group. Because the people we put into power and the people we trust with authority don't do their jobs properly. If they did their jobs properly, I wouldn't need black and intellectual. So let me continue. In addition to letting some officers off the hook, sources told Buzzfeed News that dismissal probation, there's that term again, is also used to punish other officers arbitrarily for reporting misconduct or just for getting on their supervisor's bad side. Can you believe that? So when people say things like, where are all the good cops at? Where are all the good cops? Why don't we see any of the good cops? This is why. This is why. Let's just not be willingly foolish. Okay, this is why you don't see certain things, and this is why cops don't come forward, because they get shut down. The police, they want to make you think, they want to make you believe that if a good cop came forward, that they would take their concerns and they would take their what they're saying seriously, when in reality that's not the case. The Intercept ran a story, I want to say late 2016. I want to say it was late 2016, where they were talking about, it was a 4-part story. I forgot the name of the story. I probably shouldn't have brought it up if I don't have the article right in front of me. But the Intercept ran a very similar story where you had some cops in Chicago that were exposing crazy systemic abuses in Chicago. And we all know the Chicago Police Department is one of the most corrupt police departments in the country. Everybody knows that. Okay, but they got attacked. And then you have that story in Baltimore. I'm glad I thought about this because it ties in. You had the story in Baltimore of the police officer who was going to spill the beans on his fellow officer. And guess what happened to him? Guess what happened to him? He was found dead in his car. Supposedly, he shot himself in the head with his gun. Nobody actually believes that, though. Nobody believes that. Everybody knows that brother was killed. So you had an example of a good cop in Baltimore who was killed before he was about to go on trial and testify against corrupt Baltimore cops. You have this story right here with Buzzfeed News talking about how cops are put on dismissal probation when they report misconduct. You have the report from the Intercept, the four-part report from the Intercept from 2016, where cops were being threatened with similar activity and similar retribution. This goes on all over the country. Let's stop playing stupid about this. Nobody within law enforcement, I'm talking about the higher-ups, they don't want whistleblowers within law enforcement. They talk about that blue shield for a reason. The blue shield of silence. Let me continue. This is a quote. If 10 cops did the same thing, if 10 cops did the same exact thing that was bad, the outcome is different every time. If you've complained, forget about it. Said Diane Davis, a former internal affairs investigator who later sued the department for racial discrimination. Bill Bratton and Ray Kelly, the NYPD commissioners who ran the department during the years covered by the probation files, both declined to speak with Buzzfeed News. The current commissioner, James O'Neill, took over in 2016. Of course they declined. Of course, because this was going on their watch. They knew about this. They knew about this, and they were okay with it. And let me tell you who else knows about it. Your favorite New York neoliberal mayor, Bill de Blasio. You don't think Bill de Blasio knows about this? Going to Chicago, You don't think Rahm Emanuel knows about what's going on in Chicago? I'm just gonna leave that out in the ether, just for people to assume the obvious. BuzzFeed News attempted to reach every NYPD employee named in this story with phone calls and letters to their homes. Some employees could no longer be located, so we also sent a list of names to both their unions and the NYPD itself, with the request that those organizations notify the officers of the opportunity to comment. Most officers did not respond. Surprise, surprise, not surprised. Surprise, surprise, not surprised. This is so treacherous. This is so treacherous. This is I wanna. Well, let me not say that. I was about to say something. I'm not even gonna go there. Let me just continue with the article. Speaking for the NYPD, Kevin Richardson, the deputy commissioner of the department advocate's office, which determines which officers to charge and prosecute at the NYPD's internal disciplinary trials, said the law prevented him from commenting on specific officers' cases. But in general, he said dismissal probation, there's that term again, serves a valuable purpose. I'm sure it does. Quote, the department is not interested in terminating officers that don't need to be terminated. Listen to this guy. We're interested in keeping employees and making our employees obey the rules and do the right thing, end quote, he told BuzzFeed News. But then continuing, he said, but where there are failings, we realize this person should be separated from the department. This police commissioner and the prior police commissioner have shown a willingness to do that. Yeah, so they just need to be separated. That's all that needs to happen. They just need to be separated, and they need their little space to get their story straight. And so while the case is going through the motions, and whether or not this case makes it into the news, which most of the time these cases don't, but just in case this case does go viral and the story does go viral and get into the news, let's separate them from what's going on until the story blows over. And then after the story blows over and after they've been separated and they've been sitting on their ass collecting their paycheck and still getting all of their little goodies, okay, then we'll bring them back into the fold when nobody's paying attention. Get the heck out of here. That's their way of disciplining their officers, if you want to call it that. Richardson added that since he joined the department in 2014, he has worked to make the process fairer and reassess the penalties given to officers guilty of misconduct. The department declined to offer any examples of penalties that have changed or any data that would support his claims. Okay, asked about the misconduct of his members, Gregory Floyd, the president of the union representing school safety agents, said, quote, that's something that we don't condone, end quote. Al O'Leary, a spokesperson for the Patrolmen's Benevolent Association, here these guys who antagonize the public after a police shooting, that Patrolmen's Benevolent Association, the largest police union representing NYPD officers, had a different message. Check this out. Quote, we're not going to talk to you about anything negative as far as our officers are concerned. That's what the union said. We're not going to talk to you about anything negative as far as any of our officers. Just so you know where they stand. Former NYPD Detective Sergeant Joseph Giacalone, who spent 2 years of his 2-decade-plus career in internal affairs, said, quote, dismissal probation, there's that term again, is supposed to be used for somebody who screwed up something big, but it wasn't intentional. They made an honest mistake. So this is what they're saying. This is important context. This dismissal probation thing that they always use was meant to be just like for something where, you know, cops screwed something up. It wasn't that serious. It wasn't that big of a deal. And it wasn't intentional. You know, not something like some of the examples I read at the beginning of the article. Things that are definitely intentional. But, you know, they clearly abuse this whole dismissal probation thing. But any officer who is caught committing an egregious offense, such as lying or stealing department property, should be fired, Giacalone said. He said, quote, "They have broken the trust of the oath that they took," end quote. I would agree. I want to read this example to you of this one particular police officer. Then I'll probably end this. I'll give my little ending statements about the story itself. Because like I said, I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's a long article. And you guys know how I like to add my 2 cents after every paragraph. So I don't want to talk about this for 2 hours and be too long-winded. But definitely go to Buzzfeed News and read the whole article. You should read the entire article. Okay, even if it confirms what you've already felt. Like, stuff like this needs to be known. It needs to be shared. Okay, instead of some of the other stuff that gets shared all the time. Continuing. During his first 6 years on the force, Officer Raymond Marrero was accused of viciously beating one person, falsely arresting another, assaulting a third, and fabricating evidence against the fourth. This guy was just doing all kinds of illegal activity. In February of 2008, Marrero, an officer in the 52nd Precinct in the Bronx, with a stocky build, and a shaved head, arrested a woman who videotaped him allegedly roughing up her boyfriend. Officers seized her phone, which was never returned. She was charged with obstructing government administration, disorderly conduct, and harassment, but acquitted on all counts. Now let me stop. Who does that sound like to you guys? Who does that sound like to you guys? For people who I know who stay abreast of stuff like this and pay attention to stuff like this, that's exactly what happened to the guy who, I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, but the man who filmed Eric Garner's murder. Y'all remember how they came after him for filming Eric Garner's murder? Y'all remember that? Is he still in prison right now? I don't know, because I haven't kept up with his story, and I'm not gonna pull it up now because I'm live. I don't want to go off on another tangent. But y'all, this goes on all the time. We constantly see this. Okay, let me continue. But no, let me reread that sentence. She was charged with obstructing government administration, disorderly conduct, and harassment. But luckily, she was acquitted. So she was acquitted. But that other guy, the guy who filmed Eric Garner's murder, he wasn't acquitted. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe he went to jail. She sued the city, paid her $25,000 without admitting any wrongdoing. So they paid her 25 grand, but didn't admit to anything. You don't pay somebody $25,000 and you didn't do anything wrong. Okay, it's like when they pay off families after they kill members of certain families. Okay, and then they have to pay the families off. Okay, and but they try to sit back and act like they didn't do anything wrong. Okay, whatever. You don't pay people off where you were in the right. You wouldn't have to pay people off if that were the case. The disciplinary documents BuzzFeed News obtained include no record that Marrero faced any punishment. A few months later, in April, Marrero got into another altercation with a man while issuing him a parking ticket in front of a Toyota dealership in the Bronx. A judge found Morel's explanation of why he arrested the man, who later claimed he was thrown to the ground and punched repeatedly to the head, or in the head, to be incredible. So a judge found Morel's explanation incredible, quote unquote. All charges against the man were dropped, and the city settled his lawsuit for $500,000, without admitting wrongdoing. So yeah, here's $500,000, here's $500,000. We didn't do anything wrong though. These people are the worst. These people are the absolute worst. The disciplinary documents BuzzFeed News obtained include no record that Morel faced any punishment. Once again, no punishment. Just assaulting people left and right. Money being tricked off, to people who are assaulted. But they should get compensation for that. So I'm not trying to be offensive when I say that. But here they are just tricking off money to people that they should have never been assaulted in the first place. And they don't admit wrongdoing, but the people who did the insulting or did the assaulting never face any punishment, like this Morel character. Then, in early 2009, a former police department volunteer named Louis DeLuca. So check this out. A former police department volunteer. So this was somebody who was volunteering, trying to do some good work in the community. Listen to what happens to DeLuca. He was confronted, or let me restart. A former police department volunteer named Louis DeLuca confronted a man who DeLuca found out had groped his brother's 17-year-old girlfriend. The man took off with his friends just as Morel was pulling up. So DeLuca, was approaching this guy who groped his brother's girlfriend. I guess, maybe he was chasing after him or something like that. Here comes Morel, this criminal, okay, who shouldn't be on the force. He says, DeLuca says, quote, "I was telling him there's some guys that groped a family member of mine," DeLuca said. "They're right around the corner." Morel and his partner told DeLuca to shut up, DeLuca said. Incredulous, DeLuca called Morel a cunt. Okay, so they're going back and forth calling each other names and stuff. The officers push him to the ground. This is a police department volunteer. The officers pushed him to the ground and arrested him, according to a lawsuit DeLuca later filed. Back at the precinct, as DeLuca was being taken out of the car, Morel struck him with his police baton. So he's hitting the dude upside the head for no reason, opening up a gash on the top of his head. Another officer said there was so much blood, they had to clean it up with a mop. It took 12 staples at the hospital to close the wound. In a deposition, DeLuca said Morel told him, quote, "You can't disrespect us like that in the street." DeLuca received $398,000 in a settlement, of which Morel was ordered to pay only $4,000. I gotta take a drink on that one. And I'm not talking about alcohol. I have some water. I had to like let that marinate for a second. A year after DeLuca's arrest, Morel and his partner. Morel is still on the force a year later. After all this stuff he's been caught up in, he's still on the force. This is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. Okay, a year later, after DeLuca's arrest, Morel and his partner held a handcuffed prisoner down while another officer stomped on the person's head. During an internal affairs investigation, Marrero falsely denied that any officer used physical force. So he just lied, said it didn't happen. All told, by 2014, the city had paid about $900,000 to settle accusations just against Officer Marrero. By 2014, the city paid out nearly $1 million just for Marrero's offenses, not including everybody else. Publicly, neither he nor the city admitted any wrongdoing. But in secret, after an investigation into DeLuca's arrest and the stomping incident a year later, Marrero pleaded guilty. He pleaded guilty. He admitted guilt to multiple department charges, including striking an individual with, quote, no legitimate police purpose, end quote. And then, quote, making unnecessary physical contact. And then, quote, providing inaccurate, incomplete, misleading answers, end quote, to department investigators, according to the files Buzzfeed News obtained. Yet, the NYPD commissioner at the time, Ray Kelly, decided that there wasn't a reason to fire him. He admitted guilt, but there was no reason to fire him. Instead, he was put on dismissal probation. There's that term again, and he forfeited 45 days vacation. This is the salt in the wound right here. What I'm about to read is the salt in the wound. And I continue. Marrero remains on the force today, earning almost 120. I'm gonna stop. I'm trying to contain my righteous outrage. I'm trying to contain my anger. Marrero remains on the force today, earning almost $120,000 last year. He continues to patrol the streets, making dozens of arrests since he was found guilty by the department. Why is this not wall-to-wall coverage on CNN? Somebody said, I'm not doing it right now. Somebody needs to send this stream to CNN. Matter of fact, let me do that. I'ma stop this. Let me retweet this for a second. Give me a second, family. I have to do the job for the mainstream media because they don't want to do it. They don't want to cover stories like this, unfortunately. So let me see. At CNN breaking news, at MSNBC, at Rachel Maddow. She likes talking about Russia a lot, so she's probably not gonna bring this up. At Chris Hayes. Oh yeah. Send. Okay. They're not gonna cover it. Why is this not wall-to-wall coverage right now, family? Somebody please explain that to me. Somebody make that make sense to me. Yet and still, the alt-right, the alt-light, and everybody in between tries to tell us we have no reason to protest. Oh yeah, I'm going in today. I have zero patience today. I have zero fucks to give today. And I haven't even gotten to the South Africa story yet. I'm almost an hour in and I'm still talking about this. Let me see. Let me read the last few paragraphs. Then I think I have to end this story. I can't keep talking about this. Marrero remains on the force today. I read that already. Buzzfeed News asked Marrero about his disciplinary history. Speaking by phone, he said that he appreciated the effort to reach out, but added, quote, "I really don't want to talk about it." Of course you don't. The Commission to Combat Police Corruption, an organization set up in 1995 to serve as an outside check on the department's disciplinary process, took a look at Marrero's case as part of its review of all disciplinary cases that year. The Commission's reports are anonymized, so it did not name Marrero explicitly. BuzzFeed News was able to identify him by matching details of a January 2009 arrest with the probation files and court documents from DeLuca's civil lawsuit. The commission determined that Marrero's actions suggested he, quote, lacked the temperament necessary to be a police officer. Instead of being placed on probation, it said, he should have been fired. But the commission has no authority to reverse the NYPD's decisions. Informed by BuzzFeed News that the officer who beat him with a baton was still on the force, DeLuca, who no longer volunteers for the department, I wonder why, was shocked. He said, quote, "You've got to be kidding me. I was 1,000% sure he was going to lose his job," end quote. DeLuca shook his head and added, quote, "I can't imagine since that time how many more times he's done this to people." Y'all, I'm only like halfway through the article. That's how long this article is. I'm only halfway through the article. See, when you read this stuff, you gotta break it down. When you read this stuff, you can't just give like what I see too many people doing. I see way too many people doing this on the left. I don't count the right wing because they don't cover these stories properly anyway. And they're already thoroughly biased when it comes to stuff like this. All too often, I see people giving a very surface level interpretation of these types of stories. Sometimes when it comes to stories like this, you can't talk about it for 10 minutes. You can't talk about it for 5 minutes. You can't give a little footnote interpretation of, or footnote, reading of the story and think it's really gonna sink in with people. You gotta get down into the nitty gritty. You gotta go into detail. You gotta really explain why this is problematic.